Hi everyone. So this video is going to be about how to get started coil building, hand building for the burnished ceramics project. And I have some stuff out here that's from my kitchen and I'm going to show you maybe a few ways to use these things to get started. It's just as one option. So let me put these aside and show you. If you watch the videos or the lecture about Maria Martinez and other potters that coil build, often will use a pokey, which is a little clay bowl, to start building into. You can make that out of clay, real thick, and just let it harden and try using that, that's fine. But you might try something else like a paper plate. Here's a small one. So if you have a paper plate like this, you could put your clay down in there and coil build from there. If it has a shape to it, you could use that shape. This one's pretty flat. But the paper might stick to the clay. If the clay is really wet over time, it'll just kind of stick on there. So what you can use is some cornstarch to keep it from sticking, just like you would flour when you're baking or something on a surface. And I put the cornstarch in a sock, nice clean sock, and I'm just put that on the. It's hard to get the powder on there evenly without some kind of sock or other device to get it on there. And so you can see there's just a little bit of powder on there. It doesn't take much. So I can coil build onto this. And I can use this as I'm building to spin and shape like that. That's how the Hopi potters do it, or at least Maria Martinez did in the videos we watched. If you had something like this, it would be great, right? So Lazy Susans or banding wheels, we call these, are the best, but you can do it without. So I'm gonna try to do it without because you might not have that. I'm actually gonna make mine in this little kid's bowl here. It's kind of like a dog dish. It's for toddlers, so they don't throw their food across the table. And inside there, it's rounded, but it's an oval shape. Now, if I put the clay into this plastic, it'll stick because the plastic is totally non-porous and really slick. So you could try using the cornstarch on this. It probably would work too. But on a slick surface, you can use some cooking spray. So if you're using like a metal or plastic that's really slick, try this. So I'm gonna hope there's nothing there. Yeah. So it's all oily. The oil will just totally burn off. And then my plan here today is to put this in here and I can spin this around and work like that. So I'm getting my work situation set up. So that's my form, my pokey, they call it. Now let's talk about the clay. I'm going to use the Navajo wheel clay, which is great for burnishing. I have a kind of a block of clay here that doesn't have a perfect shape to it, and that's okay, but I did cut a flat side. So the first thing you want to do is to create a base. It could be like a tortilla. That's what I'm going to do, which is going to go inside that form. The other thing you could do is you could make a pinch pot, and so if you don't remember that, you can watch the pinch pot video, and that could be a starting point for you. So lots of ways to do it. To make a pancake, one way to do it, you can see here that I have cut a flat side. I'm going to put that on my work surface nice and flush, and then I'm going to use my fingers and try to hold them the same distance, let's see, from the surface, like that. But I'm making it thicker than I want it to be. So I can thin it out, because I'm not going to cut it perfectly. So you can see here, that's my slab, and if I'm going to test it for size, if I placed it in there, I'm close. And so now what I can do is I can actually throw the slab at a little bit of an angle, and it's like stretches it out like a pizza dough. So that's one way to do it. You can get out a rolling pin. So you want to get your slab of clay to be a little thinner than I started with. You can also push down. Now my work work surface is nice and dry, so the clay won't stick. This is very soft clay out of the bag. I can also pinch it by hand and kind of hold it up and turn it. Gravity and pinching. So many ways to make a slab. And I'm almost there. So, a couple more tosses here. I like the tossing it out on the surface technique because it makes it nice and even. Okay, so now let's drop it into the slab. I mean into the mold. So I'm going to drop it in there and it's going to drape over on top, right? I need to get it down inside. So I'm going to lift up the sides here so that it doesn't wrinkle too much. Now if your clay is too thin, it'll wrinkle more than you want. If it's too thick, it's going to be a heavy piece, but it's a little more forgiving. And so I'm pressing it in there, and you can see that I have a lot of excess that I'm going to cut off. And that's good. So don't cut yourself short. I'm just about right on the ends. And then there's a couple little like kind of wrinkles where it met the shape of my oval here. The clay is soft, and I can really just blend that in and pushing into this form. So go look at your kitchen and maybe you can find something to work into. But it has to be something that you can envision taking your piece out of, right? Don't pick a bowl like a fishbowl shape or something like that. Get yourself into trouble using forms that aren't going to release. This simple bowls are fine. Okay, so I got that there. Now I'm going to use my knife, and I can run the knife right on the top edge of that. And it doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to build right on top of that. But it looks pretty good. And it's definitely not sticking. A little bit of oil on my hands and around, and that's fine. Okay, this is going to be usable clay. I'm going to use that in a minute. So that's how we're looking. Okay, so this is a start. Now I'm going to add coils of clay and build up. So let's use the clay that I just cut off. I'm going to set this aside so I can work on the coils. And what I like to do is a combination of rolling in my hands, squeezing, and folding initially. I fold it and squeeze it. So you can see that. I just squeeze it into about like a hot dog thickness and then fold it and squeeze it. This is a way to mix the clay thoroughly without having to do the kneading or wedging process. Works great. And so I do that a lot. Okay, so now it's nice and mixed, and I'm going to make a coil here. And so there's lots of ways to do it. One way is to start up in the air. And I like to hold it vertically and squeeze it and turn it. So I'm pinching it with all my fingers and turning it. Then turn it 180 degrees. Gravity will start to stretch it as well. And so turning it every once in a while is helpful. And it also gives you a better sense of how it feels in different areas. And it doesn't have to be real skinny, and it doesn't have to be perfect in this part of the process. But you want to get it as even as you can. So it looks something like that. And then it's nice to have a smooth surface to work on. It could be a piece of drywall. It's really good. Here's some drywall, some duct tape on it. Or just a board, like a plywood that's smooth. This is a smooth surface, MDF it's called. And really anything that's not super sticky. And if you have a sticky surface, you could always do the cornstarch onto the surface. And you get a little cornstarch in your clay, it's not going to hurt anything. It'll burn off. So here, let's do that for good measure. I like that idea. Just tiny bit is all you need. Makes a difference. Okay, so then I placed it on here, and I'm going to do one roll on the surface, and you'll see this get longer. Okay, so now it's long, and I'm going to cut it in half. I'll put one to the side. Now, you know, look at the thickness. It's still a lot thicker than the wall of my piece. So I'm going to roll it a lot more. And I start in the middle and roll out. And as I roll, I spread my fingers. And the pressure I'm using is very light, very, very light. If you push too hard, you'll get like a flat spot. So you want to roll it and spread your fingers, reaching the maximum length of my board here. It's looking pretty good. And if you see a thick spot, you can go there and push that thickness into another area. So that's looking better. You can see how a larger table is helpful. It's better to have it kind of a long line, but I think I have a decent coil there. Now we're ready to add it on. Now the clay is pretty soft out of this bag, which is great. The firmer it is, the more you want to pay attention to how it's going to stick. If it's soft, it's really sticky. I have some water here. I'm just dip my finger in water. I'm going to put 1 finger, 2 fingers of water, 2 drips of water right onto the surface of that. It's easy to apply. And then I can take this coil of clay and just stick it right on top. But I'm actually not directly on top. I'm placing it on the inside. And so, I wonder if I can prop this up a little bit for you guys to see. I think that's a little better. And I'm working my way all the way around with light pressure initially. So I don't want to squeeze that thing on there too much because I got to make sure I get it around and everything looks good. Okay, so then I overlapped it where it came together. Now if you want a good seam, find your knife and then cut through both layers a little bit like that, and you can pull this off. We'll use that on the next round, and then I can pull this away there, and then that just lines up right like that. Okay, so this is how it looks. I have a coil, and this is, if you can see here, I placed it on the inside a little bit, like 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch inward. When you coil build, especially soft clay has a tendency to go out. So start on the inside and you'll stretch it out. You'll notice in the Maria Martinez video, she did that as well. Okay, so let's take a look. Do I have enough for another round? No. So they don't all have to, I'm going to thin that out a little bit. Let's make this longer and we'll do a skinny coil. It's better maybe to have all your coils about the same, but I think I can make this work. And so I like to add a couple rounds. Yeah, perfect. So I just kind of set it on there to test, right? And then now, drip of water. And then I'm going to add it on there. And I want to make sure that my seam is going to be in a different spot for good measure. All right, so I'm placing this on top. There's the overlap. Knife. Cut through both layers. Pull out the ends. Stick that together. All right, so now I'm 2 layers on top, and you can see it's still set inward a little bit, each layer. They look like those little kid toys, stacking rings. So let's do a couple more, or maybe one more. How about one more? So I only need actually half of this. Get this out of the way. Okay. Tiny bit of water. Put this coil up there. And I'm placing it on the inside. Slightly smaller diameter than the previous one. Now, I didn't talk too much about the shape I'm going for. One reason is because I have a good base and starting oval shape that I like. I can kind of work with it to see what it wants to do. Okay, so these rings that I've been putting on here, they're not blended. They're not really well secured at all. They're just stacked on top of each other. There's no magic number of how many of these you can do. Try, if you, for your first time, try one or two, right? Two is probably good. And then you can try more if it's working good for you. So good tools to have are something with teeth on them. Serrated rib, this is a little scratcher, a fork, regular fork works good, or cocktail fork. And what I'm gonna do is support the inside here, and I'm gonna blend down through all of those. And that's really gonna help me to get those blended together. Now you could do it without the serrated or the fork. You could use a tool like the wooden knife, like this, and you can go straight to blending here. Actually, that works pretty good. So either one would be a tactic. I'm going to go back to this in a minute, but boy, I sure like the way that this shreds the clay into each layer. And so I'm going to do a round. And you notice my hand is on the inside supporting it. And now that that's blended, I'm going to support it here, and I'm going to actually work my way up this time. And my finger's on top to catch it. It was kind of smearing out a little bit too much when I went down. If you go up, you need to support the top so it doesn't pull it off. And so you could go, let's do down, and you can see that too. So you go down, it's working in your favor because it's pushing it. So they both work. This one's giving me a lot of extra here. That's why I switched to the up, but I'll show you both ways. Down may be more advisable as you get started. Okay, so I'm blending this all the way around, but I haven't blended the inside yet. Now you have to thoroughly blend at least one side. You can leave rings, but I wouldn't recommend it for this project at all for burnishing, because those are not going to be nice to burnish over. So now I'm using a tool, and I'm going to the inside, my fingers here, and I'm blending. And I can really push that bottom one right into the form a little bit. So you add coils, you make sure that you have just a tiny bit of water between coils is a good way to do it. And then blend it. So I did 3 coils and I'm blending. And find the tool that works for you. You could start with the inside. You could start with the outside, like I did. The important thing is to spend some time blending and not power through it too quickly, because if you don't blend it well, it'll potentially crack on the seam that you didn't blend. Alright, so I've just about got the inside blended. I'm going one more round. And you can see how this is convenient for me to spin around. Alright, so now I'm going to use my finger and smooth this. Now, I'm probably going to have like a little skirt where this meets the bottom, because it's the top of my form. And that could be something that is part of the design, actually. I think I might go with that. I think it might be interesting. But I don't really know, actually, until I pull this thing out later. And so that's a bit of an unknown entity there. But I'm using my finger and blending it right to that edge where they meet. And that's helping to blend the clay better and also give me a better visual. All right, so that is basic coil building. I'm going to probably stop the video in a second, and then I'm going to add more. I don't want this video to be too long, and then I'll be back after I've firmed it up a little bit. So let me tell you actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to blend a couple more layers until it feels wobbly. I take that back. This is what I'm going to do. Let's just leave it here. This is a good start. I'm going to go put it outside in the sun for a few minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll do another part to the video. So I think that's a good idea. So, all right. So right before I do it, if I do a real gentle move with a damp sponge, that'll help to smooth out don't get too much water, especially on the inside. Don't have any water sitting on the inside of your piece. That'll really cause a lot of problems. But a little bit of smoothing at this stage is okay. And it kind of will save a lot of smoothing out at later stages. And then it's not a bad idea to just get the very, very top damp, because that'll be the first thing to dry out, and we actually want the other areas to firm up more than the top. So I got a little bit of water on there. Now that's good to go in the sun like that. Be careful. Maybe use a little less water than I did if you don't have such a secure base. I didn't have any chance of it flopping, so I could use a lot, smooth it out. But be careful with the water. And so, okay, great. In the sun.